Martin Scorsese's gangster film The Irishman will follow the life of Frank Sheeran, a hitman who carried out murders on behalf of Russell Bufalino, a mob boss, who eventually sent him to work for Teamsters union leader Jimmy Hoffa. The story is extremely expansive, covering numerous decades and incorporating historical events such as the assassination of JFK and the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. There's numerous reasons why so many people have been waiting for this film, which has been in development for over 10 years, and not least because it stars 4 veteran actors who made their names playing hard-edged gangsters on the big screen: Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci and Harvey Keitel, all in the same film for the first and only time in cinematic history, and directed by a master of cinema in Martin Scorsese. Now, when we watch a film, our enjoyment of it depends on a number of factors: the environment in which we watched it in, who we watched it with, what kind of screen it was, whether you were ill when you saw it, whether the plot has been spoiled for you. So many different elements unrelated to the actual movie can cause us to like or dislike a film, or otherwise elevate our like or dislike. There's many ways in which we can go into a movie also. You can go cold turkey, knowing nothing about the film. You can see the trailers and that's it, or you can obsessively hunt down every detail you can about a film before you actually see it. Now, this is not going to be relevant for everyone, as everybody is an individual. Everybody has their own tastes and their own method of watching films, but in my opinion, there are 3 things you need to do before seeing The Irishman in order to get the maximum amount of enjoyment from the film. Number 1. Watch the films that made the main cast and its director famous. Given that Martin Scorsese mainly works with Leonardo DiCaprio these days, younger film fans may know him as the guy who made films like The Wolf of Wall Street and Shutter Island, films like those. And similarly, given that the likes of De Niro and Pacino haven't been in the limelight in years, you might simply think of De Niro as that grandpa off of Meet the Parents, older actors who have achieved fame decades ago but are long since past it. Joe Pesci, another one who many people I know who grew up in the 90s know as the muttering, spluttering idiot burglar from the first 2 Home Alone movies. And then there's Harvey Keitel, who we all must have seen by now on Direct Line car insurance adverts staring down potential customers. If you are someone who does not know why it is such a big deal why all of these actors are getting together for a gangster film, it is imperative that you seek out and watch the films that these guys are known for. Then, and only then, will you truly appreciate the film. Because it's not just a case of this being a very entertaining, very thought-provoking tale about a gangster who went on to regret and reflect on his actions. Even though the story itself is a good enough reason to warrant watching the film, but a conscious decision has been made by the filmmakers to bring together actors who are associated with the gangster genre, actors who have worked with Scorsese on numerous occasions, and one actor, Al Pacino, who always has stuck out as the one thespian who Scorsese tried to work with but was never able to bring all this fabulous talent together for one last gangster film. The Irishman is a curtain closer, a swan song for the gangster genre, the Hollywood New Wave, and the careers of these titanic actors and the director. And the film's story is a reflection of this. There's almost a meta element to the movie in that regard. There's a reason why people are calling this the Avengers of gangster movies, and you have to have seen the old gangster films from the 70s, 80s and 90s which would have starred 1 or 2 of the Irishman's main cast, to understand why seeing all of them together is a dream come true for so many film fans. It's only then that you will have the same giddiness and joy as many will have, for example, just at the sight of Joe Pesci, who has been retired for years. It's a blessing, an honor to be able to witness this historic picture, for it actually to have been able to come to fruition. I can't stress how important it is to have an understanding of the filmographies of the actors. In fact, I would go as far as to say don't watch The Irishman if you haven't seen the older gangster films. Say for example, you're a big fan of 80s action cinema, and then you learn of the Expendables movies, the series that brought together stars like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis. The guy next to you at the cinema is bored out of his brains. He can't understand why you're jumping for joy when you see these old guys on screen together. But you are ecstatic because of course you know these actors' films and the movies that made them famous. But unlike The Expendables, The Irishman is no retirement home for the actors, as each has been praised as giving their best performance in years, in what is being called one of the best gangster films of the decade. So what kind of movies would I recommend to get a better understanding of why people are excited for the actors in The Irishman? Well, I'd say, obviously, Scorsese's mafia films like Mean Streets, Goodfellas and Casino. Then you have the Corleone trilogy, Heat, Scarface, Reservoir Dogs, Once Upon a Time in America, Copland, Carlito's Way, Donnie Brasco, The Untouchables, and A Bronx Tale. And then there are other movies, not gangster films, but some of the actors' best works, like Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, The Deer Hunter, Glengarry Glen Ross, The Insider, and anything De Niro has done with Scorsese. If you've seen a handful of these movies, at least the Scorsese gangster films, then you'll likely enjoy The Irishman more. Number 2. Read the book. The Irishman is based off of Charles Brandt's non-fiction best-selling crime novel, which he wrote after interviewing the real-life hitman Frank Sheeran on his deathbed. Sheeran told Brandt things he's never told anyone before, and even though many things have been disputed by researchers, the book is a fascinating read. It covers Sheeran's childhood, his time during World War II where he spent over a year in combat duty, his life in post-war America, working for the mafia, joining the Teamsters, and the distance that grew between him and his own family, which crushed him in his old age, as did many of the life choices he made. It's an incredible book, bursting with historical research and factual evidence, but it has a lot of heart too, being reflective in a way the film will also be. It's wonderfully captivating and full of masculine energy. If you're a fan of mafia stuff, the book has you covered. No doubt the movie will not be able to contain the dozens and dozens of characters and subplots that the book does, and it's not one of those kinds of books that would ruin the film for you, because in addition to Scorsese's master of the filmmaking craft and seeing the book's world brought to life by the incredible cast, Charles Brandt gave the filmmakers extra information about Sheeran and his life that was not in the book. I don't think reading the book will ruin the film for you. In fact, it made me more excited for the movie, as now I knew what to expect. Some of the more confusing elements like the Teamsters' trials were ironed out and explained in the novel, and the story seems tailor-made for Scorsese, containing many of the themes he's known for like Catholic guilt, ego and machoism. Number 3. Read up on the characters who will be in the film. The Irishman is bursting with real-life characters who had fascinating backstories. Not just the primary characters like Jimmy Hoffa, Russell Bufalino and Frank Sheeran, but many of the background characters also. Many of these people will have just a few moments of screen time, so their history won't be covered, but knowing who they were will add gravitas to their characters and performances, and ultimately will help you appreciate the story and the historical aspects of the film much more. Guys like Fat Tony Salerno, who was the front boss of the Genovese crime family and who had a signature gangster look of a suit-wearing, fedora-supporting, cigar-chomping fat mobster. In 1986, despite being at the age of 75, he was named by Fortune magazine as America's top gangster in terms of power, wealth and influence. He eventually took a 100-year prison sentence. Then you have guys like Joe Colombo, who helped make the most famous gangster film of all time, and was a propagator of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, and who was shot and disabled in public in front of his family, starting a string of events that eventually led to the brutal shooting of Crazy Joe Gallo in front of his family, which is also in the film. Or how about Joe Glimko, aka the Tough Guy, who comes from the Chicago era of bootlegging and Tommy gun drive-bys. His war with Chicago authorities are well documented, and he is regarded as one of the fiercest gangsters in Chicago history. And then you have Albert Anastasia, also known as the Mad Hatter, one of the most ruthless gangsters in American history. No one knows just how many people he had killed, but members of the NYPD and FBI believe it to amount to in the thousands. A fascinating character, but one who will likely have just a few seconds worth of screen time in the film. It just goes to show how many interesting historical figures are in the movie. I've got a playlist on my channel, if you're interested, called The Irishman Profiles, where I do quick breakdowns of the lives of some of the more interesting characters in the film. Check it out if you'd like to know more information about the gangsters in the movie. So all in all, The Irishman is a movie you will no doubt enjoy going in blind, but at the same time, if you do these three things, I feel you will enjoy the movie a lot more. Thanks for watching.